Jai Hind, this is Brigadier Hemant Mahajan. Today we are going to talk on very important subject of Chhatrapati Shri Shivaji Maharaj. 350th coronation day of Chhatrapati is being observed all over Maharashtra and all over India. This was an important day on which Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj became the king, and the coronation ceremony took place at Raigad, the fort which is well known in Konkan. On the occasion of this day, our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi called the Maratha King as a beacon of courage and bravery, and he said that Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj was the one who ended the mindset of slavery. The occasion is being celebrated in a big way for 3 days in Maharashtra and in the rest of the country. But what we have to understand is that Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj was not only a hero for Maharashtra, but is an icon for the entire nation. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj was a military genius who evolved the Indian way of war fighting and defeated the enemy with Indian weapons, Indian tactics, etc. The whole country needs to understand his contribution to the Hindavi Swarajy. It was on 6 June 1674 that Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj was crowned as the king of the Swarajya or of the Hindavi-Swaraj. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj gave a slogan of Swarajya. He was a great soldier, great administrator, and he ended the mindset of slavery in our country. Hundreds of years of slavery had taken the self-esteem and confidence of our countrymen. It was a difficult task to instill confidence in the people of the country, and it was Shivaji Maharaj who not only fought the invaders of the day, but also infused a belief in the people that a self-rule or Swarajya was possible. Moreover, he said people took inspiration from Shivaji Maharaj, and the system he created lasted for nearly 200 years after his death. India was freed from the slavery of various Mughal rulers. The navy that he created also ensured that our coastline became free of the invaders. And today, as a remembrance, we have replaced the sign of Indian Navy to that of the royal seal of Shivaji Maharaj. What I will do today in my today's talk is that I will talk only on the military aspects of Shivaji Maharaj. We will firstly talk about who was the enemy at that point of time, the Mughals, the Adil Shahs, the Qutub Shah, etc. Then we will talk about the organizations of their army, of their camps, of their firm bases for campaign. Then we will analyze their battle tactics. We will also analyze which were the weaknesses of the Mughal army and the army of the day. And maybe in the next part, I'll talk about the second part of the presentation. So let us start with the enemy at that point of time. That was Mughals and this thing. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj was a statesman of an outstanding ability. He was energetic, he was enterprising, he was far-sighted and very, very secretive in his operations. He followed all principles of war. His lively imagination was tempered with profound common sense. He possessed a skill to fashion a Maratha army, an instrument of war which was fitted to his own military genius and which was the instrument as far as 16th and 17th century was concerned. He fought the Mughals, the Adil Shah, the Qutub Shah. He was a strong disciplinarian. He was a marvelous organizer. Throughout his life, he never lost the sight of his aim, which was creating a Swarajya. He was always optimistic and possessed a very indomitable spirit which could neither be quelled by adversary nor satiated by the success. He was the leader of men. He was not only their brains, but he was the sound of Maratha army. He magnetized all people who came in contact with him and knew how to stir their hearts, make them fight to heroic things. The well-being of his soldier was his constant concern. He won their trust and devotion not only leading from the front but also by their daily concern in their welfare and happiness. He rose to become a natural king of the Marathas. The men saw him as such. His highest moral virtue, outlook towards women, his extraordinary respect for them, all is very well known. He did not like rape, violence, and punished anybody who was guilty of this crime. All in all, he was a military genius, an all-time great hero that Indians need to study and follow. In this article, we will carry out the analysis of the armed forces that he created, which was based upon the appreciated weaknesses of the enemy's armed forces, their strategy, their tactics. Also, the tactics used were most suitable for the enemy of that time. He established his Swarajya in the mountainous area of the Sahyadris, where the mighty Mughal army could never come. What I want to tell you now is, we will talk about the armies of these people. When we talk of Mughal, we also mean Adil Shah and Qutub Shah. He had studied their army, he had studied their strategy, he had studied their tactics, he had understood their weak points, and thereafter he evolved an army which used innovative tactics, also called as Ganimi Kawa, to outmaneuver his enemy. A brief analysis is what I talk about. His infantry was considered inferior to cavalry, or the people used to sit on horses at that point of time. Initially, his infantry was about 10,000 men, 30,000 soldiers used to protect. Then there were the subas and the forts, meaning the infantry of the Mughal Shah was there to protect the king, to protect forts, to protect the boundaries of various subas, and also used for carrying out campaigns. Their weapons were swords and matchlock. Shihabandi was a paramilitary force which was used to carry out policing job. Cavalry was a strong point of this army because these people had a background coming from Central Asia, Afghanistan, etc. So the cavalry was of two types. One was the Arya's cavalry, which was paid by the emperor directly, and second was the Mansabdars, who were given an area from where they could collect revenues, and he was told to keep a cavalry of a particular size, which was his standing. Some had to be kept standing and some had to be kept as a reserve. The weapons used by them were sword, shield, long bow. The mounts, that is the horses, were turkeys, tazis, yabus. Mostly they were foreign breeds. As far as the artillery was concerned, the Mughals were fond of artillery. They had super heavy artillery, which was mainly used in the forts for protection. The projectile was shot up to 100 kg was used. They used to have a siege artillery, which was basically used to capture forts, and they could fire a shot of about 50 kilograms. Elephants was a status symbol as far as the Mughal army was concerned. The Sardars, and this was also an important cause of their many defeats, because the elephants could be identified easily. They could be neutralized by long-range weapons such as bow and arrow, and attacking elephant made them run amok, which was normally the tactics which was used to defeat them. Elephants and camels were also used for towing the heavy artillery, for carrying out ordnance management, and they were used for decorations and other purposes during peacetime and campaigning season. Now, as far as the Mughal army is concerned, I'll talk about it a bit. Mughal army was one of the biggest armies of that time. The strength at the peak varied between 2 lakh to even more. Mughal army was organized like a mobile city. When they went for a campaign or battle, they used to move as a city, and they had 1 lakh foot soldiers, about 50,000 cavalry. They had sellers of food, or call it the administrators, called as Bazar Burges, who supplied food to the combatants. Their number was almost 5-6 lakh. They used to carry camels, they used to carry elephants, meaning the administrative tail was very, very heavy. And the ordnance, supplies, logistics was very, very important. The supplies required by horses was 6 kg per day. Soldiers required about 1 to 2 kgs of supplies per day. So 10,000 horsemen required almost 70 to 80 tons of supplies per day. The roads were necessary for artillery, but those were not available at that point of time. So many a times artillery was left behind, but when you left it behind, it required a protection. So it was always a good target for the Maratha army. The long lines of supplies were not very secure, and Marathas carried out lot of raids on these, and thereby disturbing the administration, disturbing the supply lines, making the troops, Mughal troops, look behind. They were always scared that they would not have supplies and they would starve. The bigger rivers had to be crossed at the forts or at the ferries, because bridges were very few at that point of time. So the armies were very vulnerable when they were crossing rivers, and this was the time to attack them. This tactics was repeatedly used by Bajirao Peshwa later. The speed of the Mughal army used to be 30 kilometers per day. In 1 week, when they started campaigning, 2 days halt was taken. In the long campaign, they were affected by exhaustion, stragglers, weather and climate. In the short burst, they could bring 70 to 80 kilometers, and the battle day at the start of the battle was decided by the astrologers. Astrologers said that this day is more holy, so fight on that. Holding area, with captured area, holding was very difficult, and the forts or the killas were used to dominate area around. So, and the communication was by couriers. Special horsemen carrying farmans were used. There was not much of a medical cover available. Hakims and darogas were used when the large army used to come. The intelligence was given by Kupiya, Jasus, Navis, etc. And the Mughal intelligence was very, very weak. The battle tactics which they used were suitable to the horsemen of central India from where they came. Remember, Babur and all people came from central India, so they were used to traveling long distances on a horseback. So generally, they would it was a combination of swiftness, archery skills, charging at the enemy at a gallop, shooting arrows, turning around, galloping in the opposite direction, attacking either frontally or from the flanks. The hostilities began with an artillery fire, muskets and rockets were used, then the cavalry charge, then the hand-to-hand combat began with swords and spears, and the losing side would flee and the winning side would loot. Mughals had abandoned these tactics, and later they used brute strength. They thought that with such a huge army that they would get with them, the enemy would get scared and nobody wanted to oppose the Mughal army. The scouts were in the front, armies were used by 3 lines. Mughal used what is called as the siege warfare as far as forts were concerned. Each fort was surrounded by thousands of army, and the siege lasted for 3 to 4 days. As far as navy was concerned, Mughals were a land power and they had no navy. So they were harassed by Muslim pirates on the west coast. Janjira was the fort of Siddhis. There were navies of Europe powers like England, France, Portuguese and Dutch, and the European navy was mostly used for protecting the trade. Ruling India by military means that idea came much later. So when you carry out an analysis of Mughal army, what Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj found was that it was a formidable instrument at that point of time, but their discipline had gone down, they had become luxurious, they had become lusty, their military skills had become a chief victim, and the soldiers came from multinational areas, they were mercenaries, the cavalry was hodgepodge, large number of groups, they were temporary divisions, constant regrouping took place for coordination, poor administration led to poor finances, cavalry was wasted in the force, cavalry was wasted in trying to protect the lines of communication, and keeping too much of a standing army ensured that they became a very big burden. Very small army was available for fighting the Marathas, and these were also the same weaknesses which Adil Shah and Qutub Shah had. So in this part I am going to end now in next 2 minutes. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj studied the weaknesses. He found that they were very slow, they were slow moving, they had too much of administration, their lines of communication were very long, etc. So he started the tactics called Ganimi Kawa, which meant attacking enemy lines of supplies and attacking enemy from all sides. In the second part of the presentation, which I'll take tomorrow, we will talk about as to what was the organization of the Maratha army, what were the tactics they used, and how did they succeed. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.